Picture this: a world where fire is forbidden, humans are made of clay, and one titan, Prometheus, defies the gods to give humanity a spark of divinity. Zeus's punishment is brutal. Prometheus chained to a mountain, his liver eaten daily by an eagle. But from this suffering comes civilization, fire, forging, art. Then comes Pandora, the first woman, and her infamous jar. What horrors did she unleash, and why was hope left inside? Tonight, let these ancient questions drift through your mind as you settle into sleep. No gods yet, no titans, just chaos, a swirling nothingness without shape or meaning. Think of it like the dark behind your eyelids when you first try to sleep. Endless, undefined, waiting. From this void, something solid forms. Gaia, the earth itself. She appears not with a bang, but with the quiet certainty of ground beneath bare feet. Below her stretches Tartarus, an abyss so deep it makes the night sky seem bright. Above drifts Nyx, darkness given form, and Eros, that restless pull of desire that keeps the world turning. They don't announce themselves, they simply are, the first pieces on an empty board. Gaia doesn't stay alone for long. She births Uranus, the sky, and right away you see the pattern. Earth needs sky, sky needs earth. They fit together like two halves of the same thought. But their love isn't gentle. It's the kind that shakes mountains and cracks open valleys, passionate, consuming, and like all things that burn too bright, doomed. Their union brings the titans, 12 of them, each a force of nature. Oceanus, with his endless rivers circling the world. Hyperion, who pulls the sun across the sky. Themis, who whispers truths no one wants to hear. They aren't gods yet, not as you'd picture them. More like living tides, seasons given voices. Uranus watches his children and feels only fear. He knows how this story goes. The new always replaces the old. So he pushes them back into Gaia's body, back into the dark where they can't threaten him. You can almost hear her sigh as the weight of them presses against her bones. Notice how even here at the very beginning, the stage is set. The earth takes the blows. The sky rules without mercy. And the children, they wait. They remember. Gaia's patience isn't endless. She shapes a sickle from her own bones, adamant sharp enough to cut the heavens. Then she turns to her trapped children with a mother's quiet rage and asks who will wield it. Only Cronus, the youngest, steps forward. Maybe it's because he's last in line. Maybe the others are too weary. But when Uranus comes to Gaia again, drawn by that old hunger, Cronus is waiting. The blade flashes, the sky screams, and just like that, the first king falls. What spills isn't just blood. Creation has a way of turning violence into new life. Where the drops hit earth, the furies spring up, vengeance given legs. The foam from the wound drifts to Cyprus and becomes Aphrodite, because even in cruelty, beauty finds a way. And Cronus? He takes his father's place, ruler of a golden age no one will remember kindly. But here's the thing about cycles. They repeat. As Uranus fell, so will Cronus. He knows it. His father's last words made sure of that. So when his sister Rhea starts bearing children, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, he does the only thing he can think to do. He swallows them whole. It's not cruelty, not exactly. It's fear wearing a crown. Rhea watches this happen 5 times. But the 6th child? She has plans for him. She finds a stone roughly the size of a newborn, wraps it in swaddling clothes, and prays Cronus won't notice the difference. He doesn't. The stone goes down like the others. And on a hidden mountainside in Crete, a baby named Zeus opens his eyes for the first time. Gaia had suffered long enough under Uranus's cruel rule. She forged a sickle from adamant, a metal so hard it could slice through the sky itself. She offered the blade to her Titan children, but only Cronus, the youngest, had the stomach for what needed to be done. When Uranus next came to Gaia, Cronus emerged from hiding. With one brutal motion, he severed his father's genitals and threw them into the sea. The act reshaped the world. Drops of blood birthed the Furies, beings of vengeance with snakes for hair. More blood became the giants, looming over mountains, and nymphs who whispered in forests. Meanwhile, the foam where flesh met seawater drifted to Cyprus, where from the waves rose Aphrodite, naked and flawless. Even violence, it seems, can't stop beauty from finding its way. Cronus claimed his father's throne, ushering in a golden age. The earth yielded crops without labor, and peace reigned. But power came with a curse. Uranus's dying words promised that Cronus too would fall to his own child. So when his sister wife Rhea bore their firstborn, Hestia, goddess of the hearth, Cronus swallowed her whole. The same fate awaited Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Each newborn disappeared down his throat before they could threaten his rule. Rhea grew desperate. By the time she carried her sixth child, she slipped away to a Cretan cave to give birth in secret. She named the boy Zeus, then wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes. Cronus, none the wiser, gulped it down. The rock sat heavy in his gut, while Zeus grew strong, hidden away in the cave. Nymphs raised him on honey and goat's milk, their dancing masking his cries. The sound of clashing shields drowned out the infant's wails. Even then, Zeus was learning the art of disguise. Years passed, and Zeus sought out Metis, the Titaness of cunning. Together, they brewed a potion to make Cronus disgorge his swallowed children. One sip, and Cronus heaved up the stone first, then the 5 gods, whole and unharmed, though they'd spent years in darkness. The siblings emerged ready for war. Zeus rallied them to Olympus, their new stronghold. But Titans don't surrender easily. The young gods needed weapons, so Zeus journeyed to Tartarus, where the Cyclopes, one-eyed smiths, hammered in the gloom. They forged gifts, a thunderbolt for Zeus, crackling with raw power, a trident for Poseidon to shake the earth, a helmet of shadows for Hades, making him invisible. With these tools, the war began in earnest. Mountains became projectiles. The Hecatonchires, 100-handed giants freed from Tartarus, hurled boulders like hailstones. Atlas, strongest of the Titans, held the very sky as a weapon. For 10 years, the battle raged until the Titans broke. Some fled. Others were cast back into Tartarus, guarded now by the same giants they once imprisoned. Victory demanded spoils. Zeus drew lots with his brothers. Sky for him, seas for Poseidon, the underworld for Hades. Earth remained contested ground, but Olympus became their court, floating above mortal reach. Some Titans, like Prometheus, kept their freedom by aiding the winners. Others weren't so lucky. Atlas earned an eternal punishment, holding up the heavens, so the reign of the Olympians began. Zeus declared new laws. Hera took her place as queen, and the fates spun their unbreakable threads. Yet Cronus's curse still lingered in the back of Zeus's mind. Power, once seized, is never truly safe, a lesson he'd have to learn again when his own wife plotted against him. But that's a story for later. Rhea had watched Cronus swallow 5 of her children: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, each disappearing down his throat the moment they were born. By the 6th pregnancy, she'd had enough. When birth pains came, She slipped away to a Cretan cave instead of calling for the midwives. There alone she bore Zeus. She left him in the cave, protected by the goat Amalthea, whose milk fed the infant god. Nymphs named the Melii tended him, their dancing feet masking his cries. They banged shields together to drown out the sound. A god's wail might carry even to Cronus's ears. Even divine children need guarding. Notice how revolutions often start in hidden places, nursed by those the powerful overlook. Rhea took a stone roughly the size of a newborn, wrapped it in linen, and carried it back to Cronus. He didn't pause to examine it, just swallowed the bundle whole like the others. The stone sat heavy in his gut while Zeus grew in secret. Years passed. The cave became his classroom. He learned strength from wrestling bears, cunning from outfoxing eagles. The nymphs told him stories about his siblings, trapped inside their father, about Cronus's fear of being overthrown. The more Zeus heard, the more he understood. To save them, he'd need help. He sought out Metis, the titaness of wisdom. She lived in rivers then, her thoughts running quick as currents. When Zeus explained the problem, she whispered a plan. Not brute force, Cronus was too strong for that, but trickery. They brewed a potion strong enough to make a titan sick. Zeus disguised himself as a cupbearer and brought the drink to Cronus's feast. The Titan King drank deep, not noticing the bitterness. At first nothing happened, then his stomach heaved. The stone came first, the one he'd swallowed years before, lands with a thud. Then the others, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, Hestia. They emerged whole, untouched by time or digestion, blinking in the light. The siblings were furious. They'd spent years in the dark, listening to the workings of Cronus's body, feeling every swallow. Now, free, they joined Zeus without hesitation. But anger wasn't enough to defeat the Titans. They needed weapons. Zeus descended to Tartarus, where the Cyclopes, one-eyed smiths, had been jailed since the last war. He freed them, and in gratitude they forged gifts. For Zeus, a thunderbolt that could split mountains. For Poseidon, a trident to churn the seas. For Hades, a helm that erased its wearer from sight. Tools shape destiny as much as strength does. The Cyclopes weren't the only allies forgotten in Tartarus. The Hecatoncheires, giants with 100 hands each, had been locked away for being too monstrous. Zeus unchained them too. When they stretched their limbs, earthquakes shook the world. These would be his shock troops. Cronus, meanwhile, rallied the other titans. Oceanus stayed neutral, his waters refusing to take sides. But Atlas, strongest of them all, lifted the very sky as a weapon. The battle lines were drawn. Old order versus new, father against son. For 10 years the war raged. The Hecatoncheires hurled boulders like hail. Zeus's lightning carved canyons where it struck. Titans and gods alike bled ichor that turned rivers gold. The earth groaned underfoot, unsure which side to support. Slowly the tide turned. The Olympians' new weapons proved superior. The Titans fell one by one, some fled, others were captured. Zeus spared the wise ones, Prometheus who'd sided with him, Themis who spoke truth, but most were thrown back into Tartarus, this time with their former prisoners as guards. Victory demanded division. The brothers drew lots. Zeus took the sky, Poseidon the seas, Hades the underworld. Earth would remain contested, but Olympus became their throne. And Cronus, some say he was imprisoned. Others claim he fled to distant lands to rule in exile. Either way, his reign was over. But revolutions have a way of coming full circle. As Zeus settled onto his new throne, he must have felt Cronus's curse whispering at his back. Would he too be overthrown by his own child? That fear would shape many of his choices in the years to come. Zeus had freed his siblings from Cronus's belly, but freedom wasn't enough. The Titans still held most of the world. You don't overthrow gods with bare hands. They needed weapons, real ones, and Zeus knew where to find them. Deep in Tartarus, where the earth's roots dig into nothing, the Cyclopes sat in chains, one-eyed smiths hammering in the dark. They'd been there since the first war, when Uranus threw them down for being too ugly to look at. Zeus unshackled them with one condition: forge something worthy of a revolution. The Cyclopes worked without speaking. Their furnace glowed white-hot, brighter than sunlight under the earth. For Zeus, they shaped the thunderbolt, not just lightning but concentrated fury given form. One throw could split a mountain. For Poseidon, they twisted the trident, 3 prongs to call storms or calm them with a twist of his wrist. Hades got the helm of darkness, not invisibility exactly, but the power to step outside of sight itself. Notice how the perfect tool finds its perfect user. Tools weren't enough. The Titans had numbers, had Atlas who could lift the sky like a shield. Zeus went deeper into Tartarus, past where even the braver gods dared. There, in the blackest cell, crouched the Hecatoncheires, 3 brothers, Briareos, Cottus, Gyges, each with 50 heads and 100 arms. Uranus had imprisoned them for being too monstrous to look upon. Zeus saw something else. Strength, yes. Those 100 arms could hurl entire cliffs. But more importantly, patience. They'd been caged so long they almost forgot their rage. Almost. He offered them sunlight, the taste of air. They broke their chains without effort. When the final battle came, the Titans weren't ready for this. The Cyclopes' weapons changed everything. Zeus's lightning-carving trenches where it struck. Poseidon calling tsunamis that drowned entire armies. But it was the Hecatoncheires who truly broke the stalemate. They didn't need strategy. Each grabbed boulders by the dozen and hurled them like hailstones. 300 arms launching a barrage that never stopped. Atlas tried to hold them off, swinging the sky itself as a weapon. It didn't matter. The giants simply caught the weight, all 600 hands working together, and pushed back harder. Some Titans turned to flee. Others, the proud ones, got pinned beneath falling mountains. Victory came not from Zeus's power alone, but from these cast-offs no one wanted. The ugly smiths, the too many-limbed monsters. It makes you wonder how myths might have gone if they'd stayed locked away. Would Olympus still stand? Would Titans still rule? The aftermath played out as these things do. The defeated Titans got new prisons beneath even Tartarus, lower than the deepest roots. The Hecatoncheires became their jailers, poetic justice for the ones who'd been caged longest. The Cyclopes set up forges on Olympus, hammering out wonders for gods and heroes in the years to come. Zeus kept his thunderbolt, of course. You could see it in his hands after, the way he'd run a thumb along its edge when thinking. He'd learned something down in the dark. Real power isn't just strength. It's knowing which chains to break and whose hands you need to do it. The gifts themselves took on lives of their own. Poseidon's trident became his scepter. You'd see him stab it into beaches to summon tidal waves when angry. Hades' helm passed. The war lasted 10 years. Not like human wars. There were no seasons of rest, no treaties whispered over maps. The Titanomachy reshaped the world itself. You could hear the battle from the underworld, mountains shearing off their roots to become missiles, waves boiling where divine blood hit the sea. Atlas led the Titan charge, the strongest of them all. His weapon wasn't a sword or spear. He simply lifted the sky itself, holding its crushing weight like a shield. When he swung it, storms followed. Oceanus refused to take sides. His waters became the only calm left, a refuge for those who wanted no part in the fighting. But neutrality didn't spare him. War has a way of pulling everything into its wake. His currents turned sluggish with debris, fish floating belly up where lightning had struck too close. The Titans fought like they had nothing to prove. They were the established order, the ones who'd shaped the world. Their strength came from certainty, that the cosmos should remain as it always had been. The Olympians? They had nothing but audacity and stolen weapons. Zeus's lightning split the heavens open. Poseidon's trident made the seas writhe. And the 100-handed giants, those forgotten prisoners of Tartarus, hurled entire cliffs like children tossing pebbles. Each side had its advantages. The Titans knew the land, every crevasse and current. The Olympians had momentum, the reckless energy of those with nothing to lose. Hades moved unseen thanks to his helm, slipping behind enemy lines to sabotage their fortresses. Hera coordinated attacks with the strategist's cold eye. Hour by hour, year by year, the balance shifted. You could mark the war's progress by the scars left behind. A plain that used to be a mountain range. A desert where an ocean had boiled away. The air smelled of ozone and charred earth. Lesser creatures, nymphs, mortals, beasts, hid where they could, watching as the sky flickered between darkness and blinding light. By the 9th year, cracks appeared in the Titan ranks. Some began to question, was this worth destroying the world over? Oceanus's neutrality looked wiser with every battle. The Olympians weren't fighting for annihilation. They wanted rule, not ruin. The breaking point came when Zeus confronted Cronus directly. Not with words, but with lightning meeting sickle in a clash that split the horizon. The force of it sent tremors through Tartarus. Cronus faltered. It was barely noticeable, just a fraction of hesitation. But enough. The other Titans saw it. That moment of doubt spread like a fissure. First one Titan fled, then another. Atlas held the line longest, the sky trembling in his grip, but even his strength had limits. When the 100-handed giant surrounded him, he lowered his cosmic weapon at last. Victory wasn't clean. The remaining Titans were dragged to Tartarus, this time with their former prisoners as jailers. The Hecatoncheires found grim satisfaction in locking the gates behind them. Cronus himself vanished. Some say imprisoned. Others claim he fled to rule some distant corner of existence. The aftermath settled like dust after an avalanche. The Olympians took stock of what was left. Not just the broken landscapes, but the quieter damages. Rivers that no longer remembered their courses. Valleys that echoed with phantom thunder. Zeus stood on Olympus's newly claimed heights, watching the first sunrise of their new era. It painted the wreckage gold, almost beautiful if you didn't look too close. No one spoke of how fragile it all was, how easily it might shatter again. They'd won. That was enough for now. But wars leave more than physical scars. The Titans had been family once. Their defeat left gaps, spaces where old knowledge used to be. The Olympians would spend centuries trying to fill them, never quite succeeding. And deep below, in the darkest pit of Tartarus, the defeated plotted. Chains couldn't hold thoughts. Grudges don't fade. The Titanomachy was over. But the stories, those were just beginning. The breaking point came when Zeus confronted Cronus directly. Not with words, but with lightning meeting sickle in a clash that split the horizon. The force of it sent tremors through Tartarus. Cronus faltered. It was barely noticeable, just a fraction of hesitation, but enough. The other Titans saw it. The war was over. The dust settled. Now came the harder part, dividing what they'd won. The three brothers stood on Olympus's broken slopes, looking at the wreckage they'd inherited. No maps existed for this. They'd have to make the rules as they went. Zeus took 3 stones, one white, one gray, one black, and tossed them in a bronze helmet. No debates, no negotiations, just pure chance. The first lot clattered onto the rocks. White. Zeus grinned and claimed the sky. Not just the air, but everything above. The sun's path, the moon's turning, the constellations not yet named. He'd throw lightning from here. Watch over gods and mortals alike. The throne suited him, though you could see the weight of it already settling on his shoulders. Next came the gray stone. Poseidon's grip tightened on his trident as he took the seas. Not just the waves, but all that moved beneath them, leviathans in the deep currents that carried ships to unknown lands. He drove the trident into the nearest cliff, and where it struck, a saltwater spring erupted. A reminder that his domain touched land too, whenever he chose. The black stone meant the underworld for Hades. No cheers greeted this draw. The earth split open where he stood, revealing a stairway of shadows. He didn't complain. Someone had to rule the dead. His helm would serve him well there, moving unseen among the shades. You could almost miss the way his jaw clenched as the fissure sealed behind him. Strange, isn't it? Even gods leave some things to fate. The division wasn't fair, but it was final. Earth remained unsettled, too vast, too tangled to assign. It became common ground where all three could walk, though none could claim it wholly. Olympus itself, that battered mountain where they'd made their stand, became neutral territory. The peak rebuilt itself as they watched, towers of cloud and marble forming a meeting place above the mortal world. Not every Titan faced punishment. Prometheus, who'd sided with Zeus early, kept his freedom. Themis, too, for her wise counsel. Their mercy spoke volumes about what the new regime valued, intellect over brute strength. Atlas got no such reprieve. His punishment fit the crime, bearing the sky's weight forever, that burden he'd once wielded as a weapon. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The remaining Titans scattered. Some fled to distant corners of creation. Others, like Oceanus, simply withdrew, his waters turning sluggish with indifference. A few, the dangerous ones, were dragged to Tartarus by the 100-handed giants. Their laughter echoed through the chasms as they locked the doors. The Olympians wasted no time marking their territories. Zeus set his throne at Olympus's highest point, where storm clouds gathered at his whim. Poseidon raised an undersea palace of coral and wrecked ships, its halls lit by bioluminescent fish. Hades' realm took shape around him, the fields of asphodel for common souls, Elysium for heroes, Tartarus's deeper pits for the truly damned. Each kingdom reflected its ruler in ways they probably didn't yet realize. Watch how power changes them in these early days. Zeus starts carrying his thunderbolt everywhere, fingers tracing its edges. Poseidon develops a habit of summoning waves when annoyed, even if no ocean's nearby. Hades grows quieter, his movements more deliberate. They're molding themselves to fit these new roles, these lots they drew without thinking through the consequences. The earth becomes the battleground by default. Forests grow where Demeter walks, volcanoes erupt where Hephaestus forges. Mortals, those few who survived the war, cower in caves, unaware their world now has 3 competing landlords. It won't stay empty for long. Already plans are forming on Olympus about what to do with all that untouched clay. On the mountain's new steps, the lesser gods gather, Hestia at the hearth, Hermes running messages, Aphrodite admiring her reflection in polished shields. They'll each find their place in time. For now, there's an unspoken tension in how they glance at their 3 rulers. The lots may have been drawn, but allegiances are still forming. At dusk, the first council meets. Zeus sits central, flanked by his brothers. The other Olympians arrange themselves according to secret calculations of influence. Even here, on day 1, you can see the factions taking shape. Hera's sharp looks when Zeus speaks. Hades' silent disapproval of Poseidon's jokes. And below them all, deep in Tartarus, the imprisoned Titans whisper. They can feel the new regime's instability, the unspoken questions hanging over Olympus like storm clouds. Drawing lots was the easy part. Ruling? That's a war without end. Zeus knew power without order was just chaos by another name. His first act as king was to establish laws, not guidelines but unbreakable rules that even gods would answer to. No more swallowing children whole. No more rewriting the cosmos on a whim. The age of reckless Titans was over. 3 sisters became his enforcers. The Fates. No one knew where they came from. They simply appeared one day, sitting in a shadowed corner of Olympus. Clotho spun the thread of each life. Lachesis measured its length. Atropos cut it with shears that never dulled. Their judgments weren't appeals to morality, just the inevitable click of cosmic gears. Not even Zeus could argue when they snipped a thread. Hera became queen, though no one asked if she wanted the role. Her marriage was politics disguised as passion, and she knew it. You could see it in how she carried herself, back straight, eyes sharp, always watching for Zeus's next betrayal. Her jealousy wasn't petty, it was strategic. Every affair he had, every bastard demigod, reminded her that queenship came with no real power of her own. Demeter claimed the harvests and seasons. She moved through fields barefoot, letting stalks brush her palms like a mother smoothing a child's hair. But when her daughter Persephone vanished, those same hands clenched into fists. Frost spread from her footprints. Soil turned to dust between her fingers. The first winter wasn't weather. It was grief given root. Hestia took the hearth. While others schemed for glory, she tended fires in palaces and peasant huts alike, never raising her voice, never demanding worship, just keeping the flame alive. There's a reason civilizations rise and fall by her quiet constancy. Watch how their roles fit their natures. Power didn't change them. It magnified what was already there. Zeus's lightning mirrored his quick temper. Poseidon's waves reflected his mood swings. Even Hades, moving unseen through his realm, became more himself behind that helm of shadows. Athena's birth broke the pattern. She didn't emerge from childhood like the others. She sprang fully grown from Zeus's split skull, armor gleaming, spear in hand. Wisdom incarnate, yes, but also a living reminder that even kings can be cracked open. Apollo arrived soon after, golden and terrible, a god who could cure plagues or spread them with the same lyre song. His twin Artemis ran wilder, her arrows finding marks in moonlight where others saw only shadows. Hephaestus limped into the forge. The others whispered about his twisted leg, but his hands shaped marvels, automated tripods, bronze bulls that breathed fire, jewelry that made the wearer's thoughts visible. His craftsmanship became the unseen foundation of Olympus's power. Aphrodite needed no throne. Where she walked, wars started and ended with a glance. Even Hera envied that, the way love could topple empires without drawing a sword. But here's what they didn't talk about. Every role was also a cage. Apollo's light showed every flaw. Artemis's independence came at the cost of closeness. Hephaestus's brilliance was measured in what he could make for others. Zeus sat at the center of it all, trying to balance personalities like an unstable equation. Hera's silent furies, Demeter's mourning, Athena's two clear eyes seeing through his excuses, the fates spinning threads in the corner, their scissors glinting. Below them, mortals began emerging from caves, naked, fragile things moldering river clay between their fingers. No one had assigned a god to watch over them yet. That oversight would cost everyone later. Olympus glittered in the sunset, white marble streaked with gold, beautiful from a distance. Up close, you could see cracks already forming where the foundations met the mountain. Not earthquakes, just the natural settling of a new regime built atop old grudges. The Titans weren't the only ones who knew how rebellions started. Zeus glanced at the Fates' corner often these days. Their spindle never stopped turning. Threads crossed in patterns no one could predict. Notice how the quietest gods often saw clearest. Hestia stirred her fires and said nothing. Hades ruled his silent kingdom and rarely visited. The smart ones knew. The higher you climbed, the longer the fall. Down in the mortal world, a titan named Prometheus watched those clay-formed humans shiver in the dark. He reached for a fennel stalk, hollow as a tube. The first theft was always the smallest. The mortals were pathetic creatures, clay-formed, shivering things that barely lasted through a single winter. Prometheus watched them huddled in caves, chewing raw meat with teeth that broke too easily. He'd always had a soft spot for underdogs. It's why he'd backed Zeus against the Titans. But this was different. So he stole fire. Not the tame hearth flicker, but the real thing, Olympus's forge flame, the kind that could melt stone. He hid it in a hollow fennel stalk, the stem's white pith sizzling against the heat. When he placed it in human hands, the change was instant. They could cook meat now, soften hides into clothing, bend metal into tools. Civilization began with a stick full of stolen fire. Zeus noticed the glow first, flickering dots where there should have been only darkness. Then the smoke trails. By the time he realized what had happened, mortals were building shelters that weren't just caves, forging blades that could wound beasts. He saw where this led. Sooner or later, they'd aim those blades higher. Prometheus's punishment had to set an example. Hephaestus, despite his protests, forged unbreakable adamant chains. They dragged the Titan to Mount Caucasus and lashed him to the rock face. No quick death. This was long-term suffering. Each morning, an eagle swooped down to tear out his liver. Each night it regrew so the torture could continue. Notice how punishments reflect the crime. Fire had given humans regeneration, not of bodies, but of knowledge, each generation building on the last. Now Prometheus endured endless regeneration of flesh, but not freedom. Pain without progress. The eagle was just the middleman. Zeus could have vaporized him with a thunderbolt. The drawn-out torment sent a clearer message. Defiance has consequences. Humans got off lighter at first. They kept the fire but lost divine protection. No more accidental gifts of grain or medicine. Zeus left them to fend for themselves with their dangerous new toy. But that wasn't enough revenge. Not for stolen fire. Not for the insult of being outsmarted by a Titan. So Zeus commissioned another weapon. Not chains this time, but something subtler. He told Hephaestus to mix clay and water into the shape of a woman, the first ever created. The other gods each gave her a trait. Aphrodite's beauty, Athena's skill at weaving, Hermes' sly tongue. They named her Pandora, all gifted, but the gifts were poisoned chalices. Then came the jar, not a box, despite what some stories say. A tall terracotta thing, sealed tight. The gods whispered what to do with it when they sent her to Earth. "Don't open this," they said, knowing full well she would. Humans had accepted Pandora easily enough. She could spin wool into thread that never frayed, heal wounds with a touch, recite poetry in languages no one had taught her. When she finally cracked that jar's seal, the things that flew out weren't what anyone expected. Not demons or monsters, just ideas. Hunger that wasn't just for food, but for power. Sickness that clung like shadow. Old age that crept up silently. The last thing in the jar wasn't evil, just small and easily overlooked, hope. Some say the gods left it as mercy. Others think it was the cruelest trick of all, something to keep humans struggling long after they should have given up. Prometheus, still chained to his rock, watched it all unfold. The eagle came daily. His screams echoed down the mountainside. But here's what Zeus never considered. Every time a human kindled a fire, they were enacting rebellion. Every forge's glow, every torch in the dark repeated the same truth. Once knowledge is out of the jar, you can't stuff it back in. Pandora's descendants multiplied. They built cities where caves had been, smelted bronze into weapons sharp enough to kill imagined enemies. Hope proved more dangerous than fire. It made them push past survival into ambition. Meanwhile, the eagle grew fat on immortal liver. Prometheus's agony became background noise, just another mountain sound, like wind through rocks. Only one thing kept him going, a prophecy Zeus didn't know he'd heard. Someday, the king of gods would need something only the chained Titan could provide. So he endured. His screams turned to gritted teeth, then to silence. The eagle didn't care. It ate either way. Humans below barely looked up anymore. That's the thing about suffering. It loses its spectacle when it goes on too long. The fire still burned in their hearths, though, however small, however hidden. That was his revenge, not against Zeus, but against silence itself. Every flame whispered his name. Hephaestus visited sometimes, adjusting the chains so they wouldn't wear through bone. He never apologized. Gods don't. but his hammer strokes came gentler than strictly necessary. The first humans lived like gods without even trying. That was the Golden Age. Springtime that never ended, fruit hanging heavy on untended branches, rivers flowing with wine instead of water. No one farmed, no one aged. When their time came, they simply drifted into sleep as peaceful as closing one's eyes at the end of a perfect day. The earth itself cradled them without asking for labor in return. Then came the Silver Age. These humans took a century to grow up, clinging to childhood like vines to a trellis. Their mothers wept over cradles for longer than most civilizations would last. Once mature, they fought like stags in rut, proud, reckless, and quick to anger. They refused to honor the gods, so Zeus buried them deep. Their restless spirits became the first haunters of the underworld, whispering complaints to the rocks. The Bronze Age birthed warriors who loved war too much. They armored themselves in metal forged from dark ore, lived by the sword, and died the same way. Their hands knew only spear grips and shield straps. Their cities rattled with weapons hanging on every wall. In the end, they fell not to monsters or gods, but to each other's blades. No one mourned their passing. Their armor outlasted them, green with patina in abandoned halls. Next, the heroic age. These were the ones bards would sing about. Demigods striding across the known world, answering riddles, slaying beasts, chasing golden fleeces. They weren't better than the others, just more adaptable. When they died, a lucky few got meadows in the underworld, where the grass stayed soft and the sun never burned too hot. The rest became cautionary tales in epic poems. Now we're in the Iron Age. You know this one. People wake tired and go to bed tireder. The soil demands plowing before giving up meager harvests. Every handshake hides a calculation. Brothers feud over inheritance. Ships sink. Winter hurts. The only constant is how hard everything is, and how much harder it's getting. Zeus looked down at all this corruption. The lies, the betrayals, the way kings hoarded grain while children starved, and decided to wash the slate clean. He called the rains, not the gentle kind that makes crops grow, but the relentless downpour that fills footprints before you can lift your boot. Rivers jumped their banks. Valleys became lakes. Even mountain peaks vanished under the rising tide. Only 2 people got warning. Deucalion, a son of Prometheus, and his wife Pyrrha. They built a chest. Not a proper boat, just something big enough to float. For 9 days they drifted, listening to the world drown outside their fragile walls. When the waters receded, their chest caught on Mount Parnassus, the last dry land in a sea of mud. An oracle told them to repopulate the earth by throwing the bones of their mother behind them. Pyrrha balked at the idea of desecrating graves, but Deucalion understood. The earth was their mother. Stones were her bones, so they tossed rocks over their shoulders without looking back. Each stone Deucalion threw became a man. Pyrrha's became women. The new humans were harder than their predecessors. Calloused hands, stubborn jaws, able to endure what the softer ages couldn't. The old Golden Age spirits watched from their restful groves as these new mortals struggled upward. They didn't envy them exactly, but sometimes, when the night air smelled like fire and roast meat, they missed having skin. Meanwhile, down in the growing villages, people told stories about how it used to be. The endless spring, the effortless fruit. Some claimed it was all exaggerated. Others insisted they'd find that paradise again if they just sailed far enough west. Zeus let them talk. He'd made his point. Civilization was a cycle of rising and crumbling. The new humans were tougher, yes, but also meaner, more likely to hoard than share, more inclined to see neighbors as threats. Up on Olympus, the gods adjusted their expectations. These mortals wouldn't live like gods. They'd barely live at all. But they'd persist. That was enough. The stones Deucalion and Pyrrha threw still litter that mountainside. Ordinary rocks to most eyes, though locals claim they feel warmer than they should. The iron-hearted humans they birthed still throw stones of their own kind, sometimes to build walls, sometimes to break skulls. Some say the Golden Age wasn't a time at all, but a place, still out there, hidden beyond misty seas. A few desperate souls still sail west searching for it. They never find it, of course. But notice how the story lingers. And on stormy nights, when the wind sounds almost like weeping, people lock their doors a little tighter. Not because they fear the dark, because they might hear something in it that remembers better days.